The call is projected onto the common room wall, showing a stressed and exhausted looking human. When we answer, his face lights up with hope for a brief moment, then sinks as he looks around the room. "This is a distress call from Neonesia Aerospace Control. Are you the captain, ma'am?" He addresses Emiko, desperately. "I'm not, she is," she answers, succinctly, directing him to me. His attention flicks to me, then Quark, then to Kak in rapid succession. He addresses me. "Ma'am, what's the total floor space of your craft?" Doing my best to answer the question I think he asked, I respond, "Total floor space is 510,143 square meters, but I'd say only about 2/3 of that is free and usable. Could I ask you to speak a little slower and explain the emergency?" Seeming surprised, I would guess because, based on the image feed, he was expecting a much smaller ship. He takes a deep breath and begins. "Around 30 minutes ago, an enormous submarine earthquake occurred in a remote region, just north of the equator. There's now a wall of water hurtling outwards in all directions. We've already sent notices to evacuate to higher ground, to all islands that have higher ground to evacuate to. But there's a collection of islands that sit entirely below the projected 6-meter wave. We've commandeered all local transport capsules, sent out a call for volunteers, and directed them to begin evacuating, but there just aren't enough. The number of capsules we can get there in time are barely enough to evacuate the smaller islands, with a few dozen to 100 residents each. There's one island, Mokupua, all of which sits below 6 meters, and which has a population of 23,000. We can't evacuate it in time. There's less than 2 hours before the tsunami makes landfall." I cut in. "You don't have local ships for exactly this kind of situation?" The boy answers, "We do, but they're out of system, for training, right now. We're not a populous planet. There aren't even 500 million people on Neonesia. We don't have the resources to keep a rescue fleet large enough to be rotated out for training. Will you help us?" Without hesitation, I answer, "Certainly. Clear us a path to that island, focus on evacuating the other islands with your existing fleet of smaller craft, send us a landing point, and send word to all residents to meet us there. I assume you won't fine us for breaking any speed limits?" With a flurry of activity to the panel in front of him, he answers, "Of course not. Use your best judgment to determine a safe approach speed, bearing in mind that anyone not evacuated from that island inside of the next 2 hours will almost certainly die. Obviously, don't arrive at such a speed that the ocean flashballs and everyone dies, but if you arrive at a speed that causes a boom loud enough to deafen everyone on the island, that's preferable to not getting there in time. Eardrums can be regened, corpses can't. I've cleared your approach and sent it to your computer. Local time is 4:42 p.m. I've sent an emergency notification to the island's inhabitants to congregate at your landing point." "Approach received. We'll be there in little over half an hour, without blowing out anyone's eardrums," contributes Twiller. I nod in acknowledgement before turning my attention back to the call. "Where are we taking these people after their rescue?" He shifts uncomfortably. We don't have anywhere prepared for that many refugees right now. We'll probably be able to have somewhere on Kahiki Nani ready within a few days. Would you be able to hold them until then? We can send ships to orbit with supplies and relief personnel. Is that alright?" "Are you asking if I'm going to condemn tens of thousands of people to die simply to spare my ship the inconvenience of being engaged in their care for a few days? Because the answer is no, I won't be doing that. Start arranging your relief ships and emergency shelter," I answer curtly. A look of relief crosses his face as he says, "Thank you, ma'am. I can't thank you enough." I nod and answer, "Thank me when those people are safe. Goodbye for now." He smiles and we end the call. I turn to Victor. "I'm temporarily relinquishing command to you, Victor." "But Cap," he tries to interrupt. "I know that didn't work out so well last time, but the situation is different this time," I say, cutting him off. "There are no hostiles who might deploy interference. We have a full sentience AI who can choose to disobey inappropriate commands. There's no need for crew to be confined to their current location, and the truth is, Victor, I just can't think like you can. We need default clarity in command right now, so I'm relinquishing command to you, and that is not up for discussion. Do we understand each other?" He hesitates, then nods. "We understand each other, Cap." His attention snaps to Emiko. "I'm taking command of the ODR subcontractors as well. Any objections?" "None, Acting Commander," she answers, showing the discipline of a former soldier in contrast to her usual playful demeanor. "Perfect." He turns to Twiller. "What can you tell us about this island, Twiller?" Bringing up a holographic map, she explains. "The island of Mokupua is approximately 11.2 square kilometers, with a major settlement of the same name being located mostly along a single main road on the south side of the island, with the interior being forested. According to Galactopedia, it has a population of 23,341, though that number may have changed since the most recent census, and might be different due to visitors from elsewhere or from the island to elsewhere, so we can't use that for a precise headcount. The main language is Harmonized Polynesian, but with significant populations of Hawaiian and Maori speakers. Our landing zone is here, at a sports field by the beach in the middle of the settlement. Great, thank you, Twiller. Please begin printing emergency supplies, bedding, etc. from all nanoforges aboard. Krish? Yes, Victor, says the Senator Terran, seeming to be surprised to be addressed. I want you in the kitchen. We're going to need to feed these people and we can't afford to wait for relief shipments. Prioritize calories over taste. We're going to have a lot of people to feed. Can you do that? Of course, responds Krish, clearly still taken aback that his was the first duty to be assigned. Turning back to Twiller, he asks, Twiller, can you project my voice over the PA? She nods. Just say when. He stands, takes a deep breath and says, Okay, go. Twiller nods and summons a holographic microphone, which he holds up towards him, to indicate that his voice is currently being broadcast naturally over the speakers, and also via every translator on the ship. Victor speaks with unusual clarity. To all aboard, this is Chief Security Specialist Victor Taylor, currently an acting commander of the Bright Plume. We have been engaged with the emergency evacuation of the island of Mokupua on Neonesia, where we will be landing in around half an hour. In around 2 hours, it will be inundated by a tsunami. You may have noticed your personal nanoforges printing materials you have not requested. These are supplies printed at my request for the approximately 23,000 people we are about to bring aboard. Please collect them and either leave them outside your dorm doors, or if you are able, bring them to Deck 0 and leave them in the highlighted depository areas. Would Doctors Hatley and Fan please report to the rear loading bay? Would Doctors Gatto and Xing, along with any other crew members with medical or first aid training, please report to the infirmary and take instruction, as necessary, from Dr. Gatto? Would all cooks and those with culinary training or experience please report to the canteen and take instruction from Commissary Krish Tuan in preparing meals? Would UTCIS officers Leon Byrne and Ziva Perina, Shifushi Dao Yuan, and Tracker Taimancha Nuglet please securely stow all armaments and report to the rear loading bay? Would analyst Olga Petrakov, sociologist Shay Stone, and statistician Enas please meet with engineer Jenny McLeod and Dr. Felicity Mink on the starboard deck 4 balcony? Begin collecting supplies, left outside all starboard side dorms, and bring them to Deck 0. Technologist Officer Baobo, please meet with Corrections Officer Hasaka, Dr. Sumberi, and Miyazaki on port deck 4 balcony to do the same on port side. If you believe you may have any useful skills that could be deployed in this situation, which have not already been covered by the previous assignments, please confer with the ship's computer, who will appraise me, as appropriate. Over and out. Twiller dispels the imaginary microphone, and Victor says, I assume there ain't a problem with you projecting yourself through multiple hollows, is there? Back to his typical mode of speech. No problem, answers Twiller. You'll just need to give me permission, and I can keep you abreast of all relevant happenings aboard via your holopad. Splitting focus is very unlikely to present a challenge to me. Perfect, answers Victor. If your name wasn't mentioned just now, please make sure your weapons are secure, you're dressed properly, and meet in the rear loading bay ASAP. Twiller? Yes, Acting Commander. You can project your voice outside the ship, correct? She nods. I can. When we arrive at the island, I want you to announce, this is the ship the Bright Plume, here to perform an emergency evacuation due to a tsunami that will surely inundate this island. Please leave all non-essential possessions behind, congregate at the sports field and board. If you are aware of any persons on this island who have not been able to make it to this evacuation point, please make yourselves known to onboard crew in the rear loading bay as you board. Have a picture of them ready to show if possible. If you are injured, please likewise make yourselves known. Otherwise, follow direction into the ship and do not obstruct passage to others attempting to board. In harmonized Polynesian, then Hawaiian, then Maori, then English, then Galactic Basic, then repeat that twice. Accompany it each time with a translatable broadcast for anyone wearing a translator. Compromise the volume to project it to as much of the island as possible while not deafening anyone standing too close. Can you do that? Yes, Acting Commander. Great. Quark? Quark starts. Yes, Vic. Acting Commander? Please take your daughter back to your quarters and stay there. Your wife is coming to the rear loading bay, alright? Looking somehow both relieved and worried, he answers, Certainly. Alright. Is anyone unclear about what they're doing? No one makes a speak. Then break. Later. I stand atop a secured tower of crates, watching as the Terrans go about clearing the paths, from the loading ramp to the starboard and port doors, of any loose cargo and securely fastening anything that needs to be moved, and double-checking the fastenings on the rest. Cap, you got visual on anything that might present a tripping hazard? Queries Victor. I scan the gangways. There's a crate over there, but I think it'll be too heavy to lift without machine... Fran, could you get that? He shouts to the stocky woman. She nods and wordlessly picks up the crate. I would guess to be in excess of 300 kilograms in mass. My beak falls open as she, with only mild apparent effort, hests it into the air and stows it on top of some other cargo before fastening it down. I turn to Victor, who has his eyebrow cocked. Did you forget that this is less than half gravity for us? That she's the strongest woman in the galaxy? Both? He asks. Both, I suppose, I answer. You're right. I shouldn't really have any expectations anymore when dealing with your species. You always exceed them. He gives a mirthless smile before turning to Twiller. ETA? Landing around 2 minutes from now, inundation of the island will occur in approximately 86 minutes. What's the progress on the emergency supplies? Approximately halfway done with the printing, a quarter of the way done with the depositing on deck 0. He nods thanks and then raises his voice. Alright everyone, finish with what you're doing and take position. A few moments pass as the Terrans hurry to finish the last of their tasks, and stand at the positions assigned to them. Victor has posted himself, along with Toon and Taimancha, on the starboard side making up the inland search party. Fran, Perina and Barn also on the same side, making up the west side search party. Zon, Daoyuan and Brunhilde on port side as the east side search party, and me, Fan and Hatley in the centre as the triage and direction team. As we approach, I hear Twiller blaring Victor's message. The ship spins in place and begins lowering, the artificial gravity protecting us from being thrown against the wall. The only indication is the sea being replaced by an island, and us rapidly putting down on a sports field beside a crowded beach. The boarding ramp lowers, and an immense throng of terrified-looking Terrans surges forward. A man rushes up the ramp, his holo displaying the picture. Don't run! You'll cause a stampede and people will get hurt or worse, shouts Victor sternly. The man ceases running, but walks hurriedly, now in Victor's direction. Please, he says, can you help me find my wife? He holds his holopad up, such that his camera is pointed at the picture. Can you see her, Twiller? Yes. About 120 meters back in the queue, looking worried, clutching your picture, answers Twiller. Wait here for her, says Victor to the relieved man. Thank you so much, he answers.